Thank you very much, Abel, for raising these questions, which probably many people are concerned with. I believe we go over now into what is called the live discussion. So I suppose there are a number of participants who are allowed to ask or encouraged to ask questions. Again, I would like to ask the organizers to help me in getting this going. All right, then. Does anybody in the audience hear me or see me? Us? It says now I can continue with the panel discussion. Panel is probably us, I suppose. I'm not sure about that. So can I ask first perhaps John about this new report 147, about the use effective dose, is it quite a, if you like, a deviation from the general approach, which used to be, say, effective dose is only used in the context of control of stochastic effects, that means for radiation protection. And now this report comes and says, well, we can actually use it for some rough risk estimates. Can you tell us what was the origin of all that? Why? Well, can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there has always in the background been this equivalence. It was just the reluctance to recognise this relationship between risk and, of course, the complications of the application of LNT. But it's been the medical applications that have brought this into focus. And the fact that people like David Brenner in the States were looking at an alternative to the use of effective dose and saying that you should calculate this quantity called effective risk instead of using effective dose. So we looked at all that, and the conclusion was then that would be probably a step in the wrong direction. Really, I think it's simpler to just use effective dose as this approximate indicator of possible risk for the generality of applications. But then recognize that if you wanted to do a detailed estimation of risk, you would go back to looking at doses to individual organs and tissues and apply ad hoc risk models, so age and sex specific models that were appropriate for the population you were considering. And of course, then you always have to consider the sorts of issues that Bell has raised in terms of the uncertainties of the assumptions at lower doses.
Thank you, John. I suppose that Abel would have some comments on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, let me express my pleasure to have this discussion with Hans, John, and Alex. Yes, I believe that this problem of uncertainty is really more than uncertainties. It's really a serious epistemological problem. And let me insist in something in which I believe that I hope that we are the four in agreement, and we have to make this very clear. The first is that the system is very good. I mean, if you compare with any other industry, no one industry have a system where comes so in a simplified way control risk. I believe that first point. And therefore, second is that we have to be careful. I mean, shaking the coconut tree and destroying something that has been working very well in the last 50 years. But second, that I believe, I hope that we agree, is that the system has if you adjust the system correctly for meteorologists, the industry presented a very good question. That is the question that Alex has presented. I mean, okay, but this costs me money, and really for me doesn't prove anything. After all, the measurements that I am doing are in the 20-30% uncertainty. Therefore, this is very nice. The meteorologists will be very happy. The system will be more pure. But really, for the industry to spend all this money for this is at least questionable. For I believe what the industry would like to see is a change that really improves the overall situation. And the big problem that the industry is having in this moment is that, we like it or not, the people are using this quantity, which is defined in the area where we have facts, in the high area where we have epidemiological data. And the weighting factors are defined with factual epidemiological data. And then we apply this in a conjectural area, and then we move it to extensive quantity. And what people do, as you know very well, is multiply the collected dose by 5% per sievert and getting a number of millions of deaths. This has been done by the New York Academy of Science, not by the Greens, the New York Academy of Science. And that is a drama for the industry. The industry cannot go ahead with 1 million deaths for every accident, every nuclear accident. Therefore, that is an issue that has to be solved, and cannot be solved with a small sentence in ICRP 103 saying, okay, you cannot do that. I mean, I take responsibility of that. I am one of the persons who signed it for 103. I take responsibility. I don't put the blame on others. I put it on myself. But with few words, we said, you cannot do that. And the people say, why not? And it's true. Why not in the high doses when you have real frequentistic probabilities? That is the issue. What is risk? We talk about risk. Risk can be expressed by a frequentistic probability based on data, but can be expressed also in a subjective probability based on a conjecture. And that is the problem that I am saying that at least we need to discuss.
Well, but Abel, do we have a solution for this? I mean, you're basically saying, should we apply the sievert, or should we use the same quantity when we're down at levels where we don't have direct epidemiological observation of risk? Most of the time we're dealing with levels in that category. So if you say that it's high tens of millisieverts, which you begin to see excess in such studies, then most of the time we're in that range. So are you saying that the sievert would be inapplicable in most cases? We should have a different quantity, or we should have some sort of proviso in the use of?
I am saying that perhaps we can think whether we cannot provide a different unit for that. And the reason that I believe that is not applicable is for the following. When we use the collective dose to express detriment, what we calculate is an expectation value. And the expectation in mathematics has been defined for frequentistic probabilities, not for subjective probabilities. Therefore, this expectation can be used in areas where we have data, not in areas where we don't have data. And we have not said that with clarity. It's difficult to say with clarity when the unit is exactly the same, the quantity is the same. I believe that this merits a discussion, and this discussion have not taken place, John. The only thing that I am saying is, please, let's discuss this, because this has have consequence, John. I mean, I was seeing the table that you are presenting on medical, and saying, well, okay, this is very low risk. You know, these numbers are very low risk. But with this very low risk, people has been evacuated from Fukushima, and we have produced a lot of harm, and they were following our recommendations. Therefore, this is my point.
Remind you that we have relatively little time for if we are fixed with the 1.5 hours. And I'd like to come to another subject which has been brought to my attention. In fact, there was a question before the meeting and was also raised by Alexandre. That is the cost, the potential cost of introducing the new operational quantities. And I would like to offer my opinion to that. One is the changes are mainly affecting the very high energies and the very, very low energies, because as you could see, that the old quantities are good estimators in the energy range, which is, let's say, the conventional energy range in nuclear industry or maybe other industries. And therefore, the instruments used in that energy range will not need much changes. They may probably only need recalibration, so that we will not need new instruments. At low energy photons, for example, that we will probably need modified instruments, but as I've shown, that may be less complicated than anticipated, and I personally believe that the cost won't be that high. On top of it, I think the duration until the recommendations for new operational quantities will come to practice, I mean, the regulatory requirements, there will be at least a decade, if not two, before that will take place. And I think within the same period of 1 or 2 decades, any institution probably has to replace its instruments anyway. The numbers Alexandre has given us is if the numbers for the costs imply that all the instruments have to be replaced in one go, and I don't think that is really a correct number. Alexandre.
Yes, so you're right. Like the 5 million figure that was given, so not only is for specific type of instruments, so it doesn't take into account some of the largest and maybe like more expensive piece of instruments, like fixed instruments that we have in the nuclear installation, but also that's only for NPPs. So it doesn't take into account like other sorts of nuclear sites, reprocessing, milling, mining, I mean, you name it, waste management as well. And also, as you said, not all the instruments will need to be changed. That's not what we're saying. We know that some of the instruments will need to be changed. Some will need to be updated or calibrated. But we just wanted to point out the effect of scale, basically, because this will apply to the whole nuclear industry. So even changes that look minimal at the moment will actually have quite a large impact on the nuclear industry. And that was covered, I think, partly in the ICRU document in the chapter 5. So we think that there will be many other implications other than the instrumentation. So we have the instrumentation on one side, but we'll also have the zoning, for example, so definition of zones within the nuclear sites or outside of the nuclear sites.
Sorry, I'm just getting signal that we're coming to an end of this session. So we have to probably close. Just a final remark to Alexandre, the ICRU and WNA are in exchange already. We had some sessions together or some meetings together in virtual meetings, and we can continue to discuss it. Just to say that I think the numbers given for the cost are, in my opinion, overestimated, but okay, that's a moment and an opinion. Well, I'd like to thank all the speakers for very good presentations, and I hope that there was a good audience, and I would encourage the audience, if there are any questions, to come to any of us. My email address is hans.menzel@outlook.com. If you had any questions, any comments, please send me a mail, and also probably to all the others. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.